This is the goal. This is where we're heading. We're heading to a conversation with the divine, not a fulfillment and observance of a distant divine that we have no contact with. That's a theory of the watchmaker.
Go to our website, which is HebrewLearningCircles.org. Go to Jewish Resources, scroll down to Parsha Videos, and you'll find the source sheet right there.
Parshat Shalach. For those of us who fear the fear and like to be in the warm and fuzzy space of the love of God. So this is here the Ishbitzer is really opening up a very famous paragraph. It's one of the paragraphs of the Shema in Parshat Shalach, and it instructs us with the tzitzit. And let's jump right in. So it is the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, chapter 15, and verses 38, 39, and 40. Daber el bnei Israel ve'amarta alehem. Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, V'asu li tzitzit al kafei bigdeihem, and make fringes on the corners of their clothing for all generations. And that is obviously where the talis or the talit is, comes from. This is following this instruction. V'natnu ala tzitzit hakanaf betil chelek. And on one of those corners, add a thread of blue. Ve'elachem letzitzit u'ri'item oto. And may this be for you a fringe or a tassel, and you will see it. Uzchartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, and you will remember all the instructions, all the mitzvot of Adonai. V'asitem otam, and you will observe them. V'lo tatu achei levavchem, and you will not lust or crave after the desires of your heart. V'chei einechem, and your eyes. Which you typically are enslaved to, or literally you're lustful for. Leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, in order that you remember and you observe all of my commandments. V'aitem kedoshim le'elohechem, and you will be holy to your God. So it sounds, first of all, it may be familiar to many of you. This is part of the prayer Shema Yisrael, which is mostly excerpted out of three different places in the Chumash. And this is one of those paragraphs, and the Ishbitzer, though, kind of zooms in and looks a little closer at it, and he asks the following questions. First of all, why blue? Why a blue tzitzit? Is it significant that we're adding the color blue? On top of that, why mention, if you remember, it said twice, remember to observe all of God's mitzvot. Twice in those three verses, it says it once and then it repeats. Is it significant that the second mention of remember to observe all of God's mitzvot is stylistically different? The construct of the sentence, the syntax, is different from the first. On its face, looks like it's the same content, but it's structured differently. Is that significant? And again, which is more important, the fear of God or the love of God? And that is, we will see in a moment how that issue is implied in this verse or verses. And Ishbitzer, in his own words, he starts by quoting, and let this be a tzitzit, and you see it, and you remember all the instructions of Adonai, and you observe them, and you shall not follow after your cravings, etc. But later, the same content repeats. The first time it says, you will remember all the instructions of God. But the first time it says, and you shall remember all my mitzvot. So there's in the third person, and in the second sentence, mitzvot and God appear in the second person. We can understand this through remembering that the color blue, that added thread of blue, is intended to point to the fear of God, according to Rashi. So Rashi says, why blue? They say blue reminds us of the heavens, of the sky, and this puts us in a state of awe, the fear of heaven, the fear, it puts us in our place. So blue reminds us of the enormity, the infinity of heaven, which reminds us that we are but a human being whose time on earth is fleeting, while the heavens are infinite and eternal. Well, at least infinite. The verse is reminding us, or there to, at least traditionally, according to the sages, to instill an awe of the divine in us. And he's going to elaborate, and he says, "Uvehatchala, be'et shenichnas Adam ledivrei Torah, tzarich leilech bira, shekol ha'hatchalot kashot." He says, in the beginning, when a person enters the world of Torah, of the teaching, of the spiritual teaching, a person is required to follow the journey of awe, of a fear, because all beginnings involve challenge and difficulty. Those are his words. You can say he's setting it up, and there's an implied question in there. The question is, why should we be remembered to be fearful of God? And he says, no, it's only in the beginning. Only in the beginning, when a person gets involved with the path and the work of steeping into Torah, which means a spiritual space, into one's spirituality, fear and awe is required. So humility is required. He says that's natural, because any beginning, not only in spirituality, but if you look at life, any beginning, you kick into first gear, your car efforts more. You start first grade, you're a little apprehensive. You start college, you start anything. The beginning is a little bit, keeps you on your toes. And he continues, Lachen achtiv bilshon nistar et kol mitzvot Adonai. That is why the first time the verses here mention remember all the instructions of God, it's an indirect, it's a distant construct. Remember all of the God out there, all of God's mitzvot. It's a removed, God here is hidden, is away. And it's proceeded with V'lo tatul. It is followed with a warning. Do not follow your cravings of your heart and of your mind. Ki chas v'shalom yitanshu. And he tells us that this implies that what is v'lo tatul? Well, why is that? Wasn't it enough to say follow all of God's instructions? But then it kind of elaborates, right? And he says, well, the Torah here is warning you that if you do, you will be punished. So that is where the Torah is being harsh, coming down on the side of strictness. And it's a punishing kind of attitude. But he says, that is only in the beginning. Aval achar ken, she'adam mikabel alav ol malchut shamayim, ba'al madrigat ha'ahava. But afterwards, when a person is accepting literally the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, let me put that in context. Let me put that in a little bit of an interpretive translation. When a person is settling in to the reality of one's place and relationship with the grandeur of heaven, when that becomes no longer shock and awe, but a context for one's life, something that one is settled into, one is rooted in. What happens when we root into that level of consciousness or level of faith, you can say? Ba'al madrigat ha'ahava, a person attains the level of love, which can mean here love of God or just love in general. You're soaked in a world that is glued together with love. And a person then sees the Holy One, blessed be, as present, or present to oneself. In other words, Shiviti Hashem l'nigdi tamid, as the verse says, I am leveling myself with God before me always. That's a level of awareness, a level of consciousness that one needs to attain. And what he's suggesting here, that at the beginning of this journey towards this attainment, it takes discipline, it takes fear, it takes caution, it takes perhaps walking a tightrope in the beginning. But once a person is arriving at the place where this presence becomes more of a second nature, more of a reality and a context for life, moment by moment by moment, then the environment turns from awe, fear, and caution to love, connection, and presence. Now here he concludes and says, "V'zeh shene'emar ve'asitem et kol mitzvotai," and that's why in the second mention, the second verse, is constructed differently. It's constructed to express that love space. Leman tizkeru ve'asitem et kol mitzvotai, in order that you remember and follow all of my instructions. And here, God is in the second person, present. God is direct. God is available. There's a connection, a linkage with the divine. And that is why he says the same instruction appears again to show us that this is the goal. This is where we're heading. We're heading to a conversation with the divine, not a fulfillment and observance of a distant divine that we have no contact with. That's a theory of the watchmaker. In theology, they say that there's those who think of God as the clockmaker who sets the clock and then lets it tick, right? And then God is no longer involved. So that is what we call the transcendent God. That is the creator, the maker of the world. That once the world is made and the laws of nature are in gear, then God is gone. God is inaccessible to us. That's transcendent God. And the Ishbitzer, in good Hasidic fashion, says, well, that may be the case only at the beginning. That may be the perception or the experience only in the beginning of the journey. But when one climbs up the rungs and develops spiritual sensitivity and practice and settles in and habituated in the spiritual life, then it's the immanent God, is the God that's right there, present to me, connected with me, and is speaking to me directly. Observe my commandments. And incidentally, I'll he doesn't say this, but I think it's implied, and let me just add that the word mitzvah means instruction or commandment, so it's not a great translation, but it really does mean instruction. But the word, the root of mitzvah, tzavah, also means togetherness, connection. So the divine service, the spiritual practice brings about divine relationship and connection. And we'll be blessed to grow on that path and have less and less fear, more and more love and connection. Thank you for learning with us. Come back for more next week, God willing. Shalom for now.
Close today. Thank you, everybody. Again, click subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything. We really appreciate that. Like to have that extra layer of connection with you. Like and subscribe. Come back.
Mayim rabim lo yuklu